Well, nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. This is another episode of the GAA Fan TV podcast, and today I spoke with Clare senior footballer Eoin Cleary. We spoke all about his time, of course, playing for the Clare senior footballers between the years of 2014 to 2021. We also, of course, touched on the most recent league and championship season for Clare, obviously touching on Clare's Division 2 campaign, of course, in which they recorded wins over Kildare and Laois and defeats against Cork and Mayo. We also, of course, spoke about the Kerry game, the championship structure, some different things that we could do to fix the championship. Eoin even gave his own opinions on why the tiered structure in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship would not work in his opinion, and why every county needs to have an opportunity to win the Sam Maguire at the start of every championship season. Of course, we spoke about the influence of Colm obviously as Clare senior football manager, the rise through the ranks of Clare football going from Division 4 all the way up to Division 2. Of course, speaking about some of the big moments along the way, Clare's win over Kildare in 2016, of course in the Division 3 National League final, of course some big qualifier wins as well, all those meetings against Kerry, and of course some plans in the future hopefully for the Clare senior footballers as well. We spoke about his club Miltown Malbay, and of course winning 3 Clare senior football championships along the way. Now, we did have 1 or 2 connection issues along the way throughout this podcast, so do bear with me. If you're listening on audio platform, you won't notice any of the connection issues whatsoever. It's just over video where you might see 1 or 2 connection problems along the way. Unfortunately, that is the modern day way, of course, of chatting through Zoom and whatnot. Sometimes you do get the odd connection issue here and there, so do bear with me along the way. I've tried to iron them out as much as possible, but there might have been 1 or 2 stages where certainly visually anyway the interview looked a bit all over the place. But without further ado anyway, let's get straight into it. The Eoin Cleary podcast, let's go. So I'm here now with Clare senior footballer and Miltown Malbay senior footballer Eoin Cleary. Eoin, appreciate you jumping on to run through your time obviously playing for the Clare senior footballers, and obviously your time with Miltown Malbay, and obviously looking back at last year's championship as well. Or this year's championship, I should say. I suppose, first of all, how's things with yourself? Any crack with yourself?
Yeah, good now, Aaron. I suppose, listen, the way the intercounty season finished just for us was a bit of a disappointment, but it's great now we can go back in and train with our club straight away. And I think club championship is coming thick and fast for us at the moment. So there's a lot of games, a lot of league games, a few challenge games. So it's great to fall back on that. Listen, if the year ended on that note, I suppose it would have been a real disappointment altogether, because I suppose your last game kind of stays with you for a few weeks because you've nothing else to concentrate on from a sporting aspect. So it's nice to fall back in the club, and it's great to get involved with the lads again.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose at least they're because I'd imagine it was intense enough obviously having the league game so condensed and then obviously straight on to the championship. So I'd imagine anyway it's good to take a break now for a couple of weeks before being back with the club and kind of rest and recover.
Yeah, definitely. But I suppose from speaking to a lot of players, I think a lot of people are happy with the condensed season. There's a lot of games and very little kind of pre-season. So I suppose while there's been a lot of injuries and with the short pre-season, there's benefits to it too. Players are a lot fresher. They can, I suppose, plan their life around games, and training sessions a lot easier. So I think the condensed season is definitely something the GAA should look at going forward, because players are a lot happier with it as a result.
Yeah, no, I suppose, yeah, because I think what you want is games kind of every couple of weeks, and I suppose there's normally with a championship, and you'd have 3-4 weeks sometimes without a game, and you're trying to fit challenge games in between and whatnot. Like, how ultimately would you kind of reflect back on the championship and league, I suppose, for Clare, obviously in particular the league, because I suppose that was obviously where you had most of your games, and obviously picked up 2 wins from the 4 games and were certainly competitive in all 4. So how would you reflect on the league campaign in particular?
Yeah, I suppose up until the final game, we've seen that it is a very successful campaign. I mean, something we targeted that I suppose we struggled with in previous years was our consistency of performance. And I think across the 4 games we played, we were very consistent in all 4 games. We hit a very high level, and two of those games we got the result we wanted, and two of them we didn't. But I think the consistency performance was a key thing that we hadn't done in previous years. But this year was, for the 4 league games, we had a good performance in all the games, so we were relatively pleased with that. A lot of new guys got game time. A lot of young fellas got game time with an impact. So we were very happy with the league campaign up until, I suppose, our first half performance against Mayo. I mean, a team like Mayo were in All-Ireland final less than 6 months ago. Can't give them an 11-point lead and expect to get a result. So it was disappointing to, I suppose, give them that much of a head start. But listen, if you make mistakes against quality opposition like that, they're going to punish you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose Mayo have kind of shown, even in the two games they've played since, obviously in the Sligo and Leitrim game, I suppose they've shown how clinical they can be and how ruthless they can be. Like, obviously you were mentioning there about the condensed league format. Like, would you even be now kind of more kind of, you'd more kind of want the group stages, kind of the four with the 4 teams, or do you think even going back to the way it was where you had 7 games would be better? Like, which of the two would you nearly kind of rather between the two? Because I suppose both have their pros and cons, and obviously I suppose from a fan point of view, watching on anyway, it definitely looked like the group stage games anyway looked for, I mean, some great entertainment altogether.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very interesting question. I suppose it's only the first year it's been trialled, but I think it was very successful. I think that every game is competitive. Like, listen, I suppose if you lose your first 2 games, you're probably in a relegation battle. But we saw with our final game against Cork, I suppose right up until the final minute, nobody knew what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going on in the Kildare game, so you just had to focus on your performance and hope it was enough to get you over the line. But it brings great excitement to the whole league. It's 3 short games, and then every team is guaranteed a 4th game, which is a great thing. I suppose like that. I suppose I said if you lost your first 2, you're in a relegation battle. So at least you still have a chance to stay up if you win your relegation playoff game. So I think it's a very fair system. I suppose like that, it's good from a club player perspective because the county season doesn't run as long. But like that, from a county player perspective, you want to be playing as many games as possible. So it's a difficult one, but I think the way it was run this year was very successful. So I suppose the GA could look at that and see maybe will they try it again next year. But it was enjoyable. It was definitely enjoyable, and I suppose none of us knew how it was going to go because it was a different format. But from taking part in it, I'd have said it was a success for the GA.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's definitely in the group yous were in particular, like obviously 3 teams finishing on 4 points, like, and it was certainly fairly competitive and went right down to the wire. And then obviously the Mayo game, which you were referenced there as well. Like, I suppose even in the second half in particular, like when he's kind of turned the tide a little bit and kind of turned it around, obviously Mayo still went on to win the game, but what do you even kind of put that down to as well, kind of turning it over? I know Cillian O'Connor obviously went off injured at half time, but I suppose like there was definitely different stages in that game where it looked like maybe he could make a full comeback and actually completely turn the tide.
Yeah, I suppose since Colm came in, one thing he instilled in the team was a lot of spirit, a lot of heart and a lot of drive. And I suppose every day we go out, we try and do the jersey justice. So listen, I suppose we looked in trouble at half time, but we knew there was a performance in us. We'd geared up for this playoff game, be it promotion, relegation from the very start. We knew that it was going to come down to the final game anyway, the way the format was. So I suppose that's it. I suppose, listen, we always like to die with our boots on, whether we get a victory or defeat. The Kerry game, of course, didn't fall for us, unfortunately. Listen, we made mistakes in that game that you can't afford to do against that type of quality opposition, similar to the Mayo game, but Kerry were so ruthless in what they did down in Clare that day, and unfortunately we didn't get to, I suppose, the level of performance we wanted to, and ultimately suffered with I suppose a 17-point defeat, which was very disappointing because I suppose, I know with the COVID situation it was tough this year for the GA, but we'd have liked another game, I suppose, just to pick ourselves up off that. Now we have to wait 6-7 months for another game to show what this Clare team is about. But listen, that's just the way it is for 1 year, and next year we'll just have to dust ourselves off and target our first game in the league and move on, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like you make a good point there with the fact that there's no extra games. Like, and do you think even in the second half as well, with the fact that there was, you kind of knew in your heads that there was no extra game, and you're 13, 14 points down going into the final 10 to 15 minutes. Do you think that even played a part as well with the fact that maybe you didn't have that extra kind of yard that you'd run, or you wouldn't close a position here or there, like obviously for the whole team? Do you think that maybe kind of played a part as well, the fact that there was nothing else to work towards after that Kerry game?
I don't think so, to be honest, because I think similar to the Mayo game, when in a game we were 11 points down, we came back and we got to within 3 and put ourselves in a position to win the game. But I think, to be honest, in the Kerry game, we had a very good first after the second half, but ultimately we missed 4 scoring chances, which we would normally put away, and that would have given us a chance to get back into the game. We still, I think when we created the goal chance, which David Tuberty took, I think there was 9 points in it, and I suppose we really went for it then and left ourselves open. But listen, I suppose the way Colm sets us up, he always says you might as well have a cut and go out and try and win the game no matter what opposition you're playing, and that's what we did. And I suppose like that you're going to leave gaps at the back, and Kerry punished us in on the break. But listen, you have to go for it no matter what opposition you're playing. Like, this Clare team doesn't set up to contain any team or go like a blanket defence. Colm's always said that any team we play, we go out and try and get a victory and a performance that we're proud of, and that's the way we tried to do it down in Clarny, but unfortunately it didn't come off.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose for that Kerry team in general, like we've obviously seen the talent that they've had so far this year, obviously in Division 1 in the league, and even in the Tipperary game as well, like how ruthless and efficient, and like the forwards that they have all across the pitch. Like, what was it like coming up against them? And I suppose, like, having seen them at first hand, do you think, because I think a lot of people are looking at them to potentially maybe go on and maybe win an All-Ireland this year, and having come up against them yourself, like, what would be your opinion on that?
Yeah, listen, I suppose they have a team with a real spark in them this year. Their league form is super, and the first 2 championship games they've played, they've said they'd be pretty happy with the levels of performance they've hit. So listen, I suppose they're well prepared to I suppose approach the championship with the mindset that they're going to win the whole thing out because of the performance they put in and caliber players. So listen, definitely I think they're going to have a right crack at it, and if they can keep up the performance they have throughout the league and the past 2 championship games, they're well ready to give a crack at the championship. Do you know?
Yeah, no, because we've seen the talent that they definitely have, all right, with the different players they've brought in this year, and even with the fact that maybe a lot of people are kind of thinking maybe Dublin might be slowing down a little bit, but like I suppose in particular, obviously, like with obviously in the Kerry Clare game, like you've seen a big margin of victory, obviously in that game, and I suppose it's been a discussion obviously across the whole weekend following the Mayo Leitrim game. Like, what's your thoughts even on the championship structure itself, and would there even be any changes you'd even think or make to it or anything like that? Kind of, I suppose, considering how kind of we've seen obviously a lot of the games go in the championship this year.
Yeah, I suppose it's a funny one. I was talking to a teammate of mine the other day about this, and he was even saying it was funny. He made a good point. A lot of the people who were talking about tiers were actually hurling people. I think, listen, I work with 2 guys who used to play inter-county with Tipperary and Limerick, Sean Buckley and Kevin Mulryan. They both played Division 4 football, and they also played in Munster finals. You talked to Gary Brennan there, who saw both sides of the coin with Clare as well. And listen, I'm sure you get the same answer off all 3 players. They all want to be involved in a championship campaign where you have a chance of winning Sam Maguire. We've seen it in the hurling. It doesn't work. Tiers haven't worked. Antrim this year, Antrim made great inroads in the league. They got promoted last year. They lost 1 championship game, and now they're down to Joe McDonagh again. And I suppose it's an unfair system. Promotion relegation is wherever we take part in the league, but I think in championship every team should get a chance to compete for Sam Maguire. As for the Leitrim lads, I know, listen, with the result of the weekend, but people forget last year they played a Derry team and drew them in the league, and this is a Derry team that would have been very disappointed that they didn't get a result against Donegal the weekend. They put up a great performance and they look a real serious team. So, I mean, to say Leitrim don't deserve to be in the championship, or other teams who've got beatings in the championship, I mean, I just think it's ridiculous, really. Listen, I don't know the correct format. I'd like to see a Champions League format where you have a Division 1, 2, 3, 4 team involved. And listen, then maybe the top 2 qualify for top 16. The bottom two then maybe could qualify for a second year competition. But listen, if they don't have time to do that, that's fair enough. You still have 3 championship games, and if you don't do enough to finish in the top 2, then fair enough. Because listen, the club players have to be looked after too, and the championship can't run on forever. But I think you had a format where if you had three games each, you finish in the top 2, your season's done, then fair enough. Because this year, I suppose there's that empty feeling for the teams that go out like ourselves after losing 1 game. Listen, if you get beaten twice in any championship season, you don't deserve to be at the latter end of it anyway. But to not get that chance to play 2 games it's tough, because you put a lot of time into it, a lot of training sessions, and I just think every team should have at least 2 games in it. But I do think, especially for hurling people to say that there should be tiers in football. Listen, there was a few results that there was big margins, but in any competition there is. I mean, the Premier League there, Man City could go out at one weekend and beat Brighton 5-0, and Brighton could go out and beat Man United the next weekend 2-1. So I do think every team should have a chance to win Sam Maguire. I think maybe an overhaul is needed. I'd like to see the group stages, because I think it would improve things. A Division 4 team playing against Division 1, I think while the result might be one-sided, and people say it's not good for any team, but it does improve the standard when you're playing against that standard of player. The gap actually widens when you don't have that opportunity to play against players of the highest standard in GAA. So I would like to see a bit of a reform, but not this tier system that people are talking about.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point that you make. All right, definitely about the different tiers and in hurling. All right, like, and I suppose like in fairness to hurling, like it probably is a bit more competitive. Like when you have 7 or 8 teams probably at the start of the year that are going for an All Ireland, whereas football is probably only 2 or 3 realistically right now. Like I suppose the Champions League format that you mentioned there, would that be kind of like a group stage of 4 between the 32 counties, or well, I suppose 31, and then obviously London and New York as well, and then kind of go into a knockout. But I suppose like you've had some people who kind of say like maybe combine the league and the championship together. Like, would you be kind of down to have them separately from one another, or would you even kind of consider potentially having them kind of together in some sort of format?
I don't think anything about the league should be changed. It's a great system. As you made the point earlier, maybe this year's system could be an option going forward for maybe less games, and I give you more time to play with more championship games. But definitely with the divisions and the teams in them, the opportunity to play in Croke Park, I wouldn't change much about that. But if we're looking at a Champions League format for the championship, then maybe league needs to be condensed a bit, and if so, play this year's format. But I wouldn't change anything about the league. For the provincials, I suppose like that, we all dream of what Tipperary and Cavan did last year, what Leitrim did years ago, what Clare did in '92, etc. We all dream of that big day out, that chance where I suppose a year everything falls to you. So I suppose I would like them to be kept, but listen, I suppose if there's an overhaul needed, I suppose that will be have to looked at as well. But I would like to have them kept as well. But I suppose it all depends too, that the club players need to be factored in, whether you have time to play all these games. If you don't have time to play provincial and Champions League format games, I would just go with the Champions League format games, because you're still getting your 3 championship games, and you're getting a fair crack at the whip. So that's my piece on it anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I think you alluded to it there with Tipperary and Cavan, like last year. Like, there's even seeing Tipperary like winning a Munster championship. I know obviously you played them last year in a Munster quarter final, like, but seeing them going on and winning it and beating Cork in the final, does that even give you confidence that, like, for Clare, like in particular, and even some of the other counties, maybe the likes of your Limericks as well, so there is a potential there that you could maybe in some year in particular, if Kerry have an off day or whatever, that you could maybe go on and potentially win a Munster championship one day?
Yeah, I suppose, listen, every year you set out, when you start your pre-season and maybe November, December, you're always, I suppose, dare to dream, as they say. And to win that Munster title is huge. Like, it must have been some feeling for them Tipperary players. to finally get there, because like they put in as much effort as any team in the county, and of course you dream of that. It takes a lot to get there. I suppose so many different factors at play, but that's what you dreamed. That's why you, I suppose, put in such a big effort, because you dream to win a Munster Championship. Because like that, you look at videos back in Clare 1992 and all these great victories, what it means to the people, and I suppose it's something you never forget. I'm sure them Tipperary players will never forget that day in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last year, and it was an unbelievable achievement, and you have to take your head off to them. Fair play to them, they fully deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was, I suppose, a monumental occasion for Tipperary, and I suppose for Cavan as well. Like, just getting your thoughts, obviously, on the Munster final that's taking place next weekend. Like, obviously, you've come up against Cork, you've come up against Kerry, and seen as Cork obviously overturned Kerry last year. Like, how could you see that game going? Do you think maybe there's a potential for Cork to pull off another shock, or would you reckon that Kerry would have enough to get over the line once again?
Oh, of course, I think Cork are a fine team, and I suppose any day they perform to their highest level. You've seen it last year down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. That was a huge victory against Kerry, a Kerry team which was well fancied. So, listen, I'd give them every chance. Kerry are superior outfit as well, but it's going to be a very interesting game. I think Cork's Division 2 campaign, I mean, like ourselves, they beat ourselves, and they beat Laois, and then they beat Westmeath, and then they went on to the Championship and beat Limerick. So listen, they'll be full of confidence going into that final, and as will Kerry. So I think it'll be a very interesting game. You'd imagine Cork will set up like they did last year against Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because it worked for them very well. So it'll be very interesting to see. Cork have some excellent players to make any team in the country. So it will be very interesting, and it's a game I look forward to watching.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose we'll run through your time, obviously playing for the Clare seniors. Obviously, I think you made your debut. I think it was in 2014. I think it was, as far as if I've done my research correct, I suppose.
Yeah, I made my debut in 2014 against Waterford. I was actually originally on the provisional panel for the league, but I was dropped, and I got invited in for the championship campaign. So I played against Waterford in that year.
And I suppose, like, given how popular obviously hurling is in Clare, like, obviously over the past 20 years or so, obviously you referenced that 92 success, like, of course, for the Clare footballers, but like, what was it that kind of drew you towards playing football at inter-county level, like, instead of hurling? Like, was there anything in particular, or was football just always the first and main choice?
Yeah, football was always the main choice. To be honest, I from West Clare, Miltown Malbay is in the heart of West Clare, and it's a huge football and parish. We've a hurling team, so football is the number one. My parents are both big into it, and my mother's family, my uncle was in the 92 panel, and my first cousin Inda was played for Clare for years as well. And also my cousin Dermot is on the Clare panel currently. So I suppose like that, it was big in my family, and I suppose I had no choice whether to pick up a football at a young age. So thankfully, I suppose like that, I've had a real success. I've enjoyed it. Just even the friends I've made it's huge. Like, it's a huge part of your social life. It's very healthy to get involved in a club and county team, and it's been very enjoyable so far. And as long as I can stay fit and healthy, I'll keep playing for as long as I can.
100%. Like, even you reference your uncle there, like, I'm sure he has some stories then from that 1992 success. Like, obviously it was a historic day in many ways for Clare, like, obviously winning that Munster title. Like, I'd imagine, like, when you look back on those memories, that's probably, I'd imagine, some sort of motivation for yourself and for much of that Clare team to go and maybe try and emulate that success one day anyways.
Yeah, definitely. We two local clubmen involved, Martin Flynn and Carl Walsh on the Clare panel, and I suppose like that, you'd have great pride looking back on two fellow parishioners being part of that hugely successful Clare team, as well as my own family. You'd meet some of the guys there: Francis McInerney, Seamus Clancy, Kieran Mahoney. The latter two got involved with underage Clare teams I was involved in, and you couldn't meet nicer fellas. So listen, I suppose, of course, you look up to them as idols, and hopefully we're lucky enough someday to do something similar.
And I suppose obviously in 2014, like, when you came into the team, like, obviously you were promoted from Division 4 that year. Like, does that even show kind of how far you have come in many ways? The fact that you were back in Division 4 getting promoted that year, and like nowadays you're kind of looking to get up to Division 1. Does that even show the kind of progress of Clare football down the years from 2014 up until now?
Yeah, definitely. I think even I was watching on as a Clare football sport before I joined the panel, and they always had brilliant footballers. Just a few times we're looking at to get out of division, but I think the key to the whole thing was obviously Colm coming in. He just changed the whole culture of the thing and brought a lot of structure to the setup, and I suppose got a lot of good guys on board with him. And in fairness, things have kind of snowballed from there. So, but Clare have always had good players, and I suppose it just took a man like Colm to come in and change the whole mindset of the team. And in fairness, he did it, and hopefully, I suppose he stays for the following year, because we'd love to have him again for what he's brought to the setup. And he's just, I suppose, like that. He's a great man, like, and he just wears his heart in his sleeve. He loves Clare football and puts his whole life into it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you made a lot of good points there. Definitely, like, since he's come into the team, like, what do you think's even like the biggest kind of effect he's even had on the team, or like, what do you think like he's kind of changed in like specifically to kind of get you through the ranks and kind of move you up to divisions? Because I know I was speaking to Daniel St. Ledger there not too long ago, a Carlow footballer, a former Carlow footballer, and he was even saying, you know, to kind of get out of Division 4 and to kind of move your way up through the ladder, like, there's not many teams that can find a way to do so. But I suppose Clare are the perfect example, because you are a team that has done that.
Yeah, definitely. I just think when he came in, he's a real kind of players manager. He just looks after players so well. He's so fair to everyone. He's really kind of charismatic person. I mean, he's a guy who you would go above and beyond for, because he does everything for players. If they ask him anything, he'll go and do it. And he's helped guys out get jobs. He's, I suppose, anything really you ask him for, he's gone and done it, or he's made an effort to do it. And players really appreciate that, and they're willing to put their neck in the line for someone like that. Because if a fella's willing to go above and beyond for you, all you have to do is go out and play a football match for him and be fit and listen to the instructions that you're given, and that's all you have to do. And this fella's, I suppose, helping you progress further in your own life as well as your sporting life. So when you have a guy like that in charge, you're willing to go above and beyond for him, and like that, I think that's why players perform for Colm, because I suppose he's got so many good attributes that players just want to be part of it. Because I suppose anything he gets involved in, be it fundraisers or club teams or county teams, he's been successful at, and he's a very successful businessman in his own right. So that's really it. That's his biggest strength, is he's just a great guy with players, and I suppose as well as that, he's a very smart fella. So it's the longer Colm stays with Clare football, the better, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think you could see that in a lot of the games you played this year as well. In particular, the Mayo game, like the amount of passion I think I could see on the pitch from a lot of the Clare lads in particular was breathtaking in many ways. Like, so you can definitely see he's definitely, you know, kind of rubbed off his ideas on the team and whatnot. Like, and I suppose 2016 in particular, like, just kind of looking back at some of the different seasons, like obviously the Division 3 final, beating Kildare, I'd imagine that was a big enough occasion for yourself, getting that victory obviously and playing in Croke Park as well.
Yeah, that was huge. I suppose, like that, looking back on previous years, some of the Clare footballers weren't lucky enough to play in Croke Park. So that was my first time playing in Croke Park, and it was a huge honour, and it was a real enjoyable experience to get over the line. I think Gary Brennan's performance that day was one that I suppose you'd remember for the rest of your days. And himself and Dean Ryan got 2 goals finishing up, which resulted in us getting a great victory that you cherish. You know, I suppose that many teams get to finals in Croke Park and get victories. So it was against a very good Kildare outfit. So listen, that was a huge occasion, and it was very enjoyable as well. It was Mick Bohan came in that year. He's a great coach. He's done great things with the Dublin ladies lately, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him as Dublin senior football manager in the coming years as well. He's a really good coach, and he's I suppose he knows football inside out, and he explains it very well to players. So he was a huge addition that year. We only had him for 1 year, but he was excellent in everything he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I know he was in contention obviously when the Dublin job came up there after Jim Gavin stepped away. So I don't know how long Desi would be there, but I'm sure he'd definitely be in contention, no doubt about it. Like even that year as well, like getting to an All Ireland quarter final. Like what was it do you think that clicked in particular for yourselves, like kind of in that year? Because I suppose to go from 2014 Division 4 and then all of a sudden, you know, Division 3 being promoted, winning the Division 3 final, and then an All Ireland quarter final against Kerry as well. I mean, it was definitely quite a rise, I suppose, in the space of 2 years.
Yeah, it was definitely, I'd say, my most enjoyable year as a Clare footballer. I was felt like we were kind of riding on a crest of a wave, to be honest. After Division 3 victory, we went on and beat Limerick in our first round game, and then Kerry beat us. But after that, the qualifiers was a hugely enjoyable experience. We got 3 games there, we won all 3, and we were back in an All Ireland quarter final and back in Croke Park. But I think everyone just really put the shoulder to the wheel that year. Everyone was, I suppose, gave their life to Clare football. There was really good focus in the group, and like that, just a few victories kind of spurred lads on. I suppose like that, you can't bet winning really. When teams are winning, you hear, you don't hear as much from people on the outside that things are going wrong in the camp, or he's not happy, or this fella isn't happy. Everyone just gets on with it and just, I suppose, takes every game as it comes. Whereas when things aren't going well, you always hear unrest in the camp, and someone could leave the panel, or there could be some disagreement. But definitely that year, I think the whole thing just snowballed from a few victories we got there campaign, and we just grew and grew and grew as a team, and thankfully it was a very successful year.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and you were even mentioning there coming up against Kerry. Like, it seems almost every year you come up against Kerry at some point, be it in the Munster Championship or in the All Ireland series or something like that. Anyways, like I'd say you're probably nearly getting fed up playing them at this point. I know Colm Collins was kind of joking there before, like about coming up against them all the time. So it must be, I suppose, a good experience in many ways, but frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, I suppose. Listen, that's the luck of the draw. We've played them at home in a few years, and we've had very close games with them. I suppose some of the games at Fitzgerald Stadium, we just haven't performed, and like that, we've no one to blame but ourselves. But some of the games at Cusack Park have been very enjoyable games. It was nip and tuck for a lot of those 2 games in 2014 and 2017, and even 2019. So they were hugely enjoyable games, playing against one of the best teams in the country. These mistakes, and there you get a huge learning experience from playing these teams, because they're just, I suppose, they're used to playing at that level week in, week out, and that's why if you get to Division 1, you're lucky enough to get those games week in, week out, and it can only improve you as a team. So that's our next target now, is get to Division 1, and I suppose once the 2022 season starts, we'll just have to focus in on that, and try everything we can to get there.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose like you're alluding to it there, like I suppose it's been a gradual rise, I suppose, since 2014, obviously moving your way up the divisions. Like, and I suppose like Division 1 is definitely, I'd imagine anyway, the main target anyway in the next couple of years. Like, I suppose because you've seen with teams, like you've seen with Armagh this year in particular, like once you get up there and you know if you be competitive, you win the odd game or two. Like I suppose like that's kind of the main way you can progress. So I suppose that's what I'd imagine you are working towards at the moment anyway for the next couple of years.
Definitely, yeah, like we had a great game with Armagh in Cusack Park last year. We were level going down the final straight in 10 minutes, I think, and Armagh kicked on and kicked the last 5 points. And it was funny, we put ourselves in a position where if we'd won that game in the final 10 minutes, the way other results are, we'd actually been promoted. But we ended up just staying up because Cavan lost to Roscommon. So that's the great thing about Division 2, is because it's, I suppose, everything goes down to the final day. Every kick of the ball matters. Like that, playing a team against Armagh, they showed their class in the final 10 minutes and kicked on. But it's funny playing Armagh the last few years. I just think they're a team with serious forwards, and they kind of play a style of football which I think is well suited to competing at the very top. And I wouldn't be surprised seeing them knocking around an All Ireland semi final or final in the next few years. I suppose the age of their panel is, I suppose, majority of the players are very young, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them competing right at the very top in the next few years, because they're a serious outfit.
Absolutely, yeah. Like they've definitely got a lot of good players coming through at the moment, and I think like under Kieran McGeeney, it's definitely been a a gradual rise, and it'll be interesting to definitely keep an eye on them. Obviously in the Ulster Championship this weekend. Obviously, like, you've faced a number of different teams across Division 3, 4, Division 2, and obviously a couple of good teams in Munster. Who would you say has been the toughest team you've kind of come up against, or is there any team in particular that you'd face and you'd be thinking, I don't want to face them again?
I suppose like that you said, there's some teams who can beat in any given day. I suppose listen, you have to say Kerry in certain years have been very good against us when they played us. Meath likewise. I suppose yeah, Kerry and Meath are two that stand out to me really. Just when they play us, they seem to really be on their game, and we've had some good battles with them, but on other occasions they've got the better of us when we haven't performed, and that's a sign of a good team, that when they can smell blood almost when a team isn't at their optimum, that they can take advantage of that, and they're ruthless behind it. So yeah, definitely Kerry and Meath would be definitely two of the best teams I'd have come across. We played Mayo in 2017, the year they got to the All Ireland final against Dublin. I liked that was a great game in Cusack Park. I think we were leading 8-4 at one stage. But like that, we just made a few mistakes and unfortunately didn't get over the line. So they were another top class outfit, as they showed this year when we played them. They've got some really good players. It was on Paddy Durkin. He's a brilliant footballer. He's got some great attributes, and like that, you learn a lot when you mark these players. You just take different things for them, and you suppose you try and use it for your own game. So that's where you want to be competing at, and that's where the type of player you want to be playing against week in, week out.
100%, yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose looking at your time with Miltown Malbay, like we'll run through them. I suppose obviously, like you mentioned, a big club, obviously in the west of Clare, big football club. What's it been like, I suppose, playing for them, and I suppose being part of the community there, and obviously winning a Clare Senior Football Championship in 2015, the first for the club in 25 years. And I imagine that's definitely something that that you remember fondly anyway for many years to come.
Yeah, definitely. I've been very lucky to have some great days with the club. Even my first year involved in 2013, we got to the Munster intermediate final, but a game that sticks out. We played Curra from Kerry in the semi final and beat them in Miltown at home. But there was a great atmosphere at the ground that day, and that's something that would stick with you throughout your club career. But definitely, 2015 was a huge day for the club. I suppose like that we hadn't won it in 25 years, but you could see it since from the following years that the whole, I suppose, the roof was blown off the whole thing, that players just give so much commitment and so much time to their own performance. They looked after themselves when they went off the field. I suppose they knew when to socialise and when not to socialise, but it just, I suppose the club became a real professional outfit, and a lot of credit I suppose a lot of credit is due to the guys who got involved with the club and put that work in, that afforded us the opportunity to compete against some very good teams in Clare. But it's been very enjoyable the past since 2013 really. I suppose like that there's some outstanding players in the club who I suppose would make any club team in the country, and we're very lucky to have them, and we're aware that doesn't last forever. So just when you have these players, you have to, I suppose, take advantage of it and try and win as much as you can, because they're not around forever. You try and focus on underage, but you can be lucky and unlucky with a crop that comes through. So we're just trying to put everything into every season we have with the club and try and get as most out of it as we can. So I'm very lucky to be involved with a club team like Miltown, because I know some teams and some players aren't as fortunate.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. All right, like, and obviously going on to win it in 2018 and 2019, of course, as well, and getting to a Munster final as well, of course, like you mentioned. Like, what do you think even changed for yourselves or kind of clicked? Because obviously, I suppose a 25-year wait between 1990 and 2015. Like, do you think there was anything in particular that clicked for you, or do you think it was just more that the quality of the players coming through and that you were actually able to fully compete with all the other teams in Clare as well?
Yeah, a bit of both. I think management deserves a lot of credit that year. They brought a lot of structure to the whole club and a lot of focus, and did a lot of great things for the club. And then you had the quality player coming up. I think there was some great work done by some underage. The manager that year was Mikey Neelan, and there was some great work done with underage teams by John Sullivan and Morris Reedy, and they brought some players through, which I suppose, developed into senior players, and that's what you need. You need guys training these young lads at a high quality, at a high level, and that's what makes great senior players. And I suppose sometimes that gets lost. It gets lost because I suppose everyone is so concentrated in the senior team they forget about the guy who carried through the player to make that senior player. So yeah, definitely I'd attribute a lot of it to management, to underage management, and also to the quality of player that came through, the mentality of them too. I think a lot of the guys that came through just had the right attitude, did the right things, done their gym. And listen, if they do that, they have a great chance. If nowadays, if you're dedicated to the game, you have a great chance, no matter what your skill level is, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I'd imagine it's great anyway to, I suppose, be back with them now in a couple of weeks, obviously, and I suppose have the Clare Senior Football Championship back up and running. Like, because obviously, it's been a huge gap. Obviously, you've had 2 inter-county seasons back to back with no clubs in between. So I suppose to be back, like, it would be about a year or so really since you've been back. So I'd imagine that's something you're definitely looking forward to, anyways.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it was funny last year when after COVID that the club was first and the county was after it. So there is a big gap to when you play club championship again. But yeah, no, really looking forward to the club championship now. We're actually in a group of 5. It's 4 very good teams involved. You've got Clare, Kilmurray, Ennistimon and Cratloe. So like that, if you're not in your game in any of those days, you'll be beaten. So have those games. It's great to be involved in those games. And listen, we got relegated in 2011 or 2012 and we were an intermediate level, so you're privileged to be involved and be able to compete against these teams too, because we're aware of the other side of it too, that if you don't perform, that you could put yourself in a relegation battle, and then I suppose you're playing against different opposition. So like that, no, we're very lucky to be playing against quality teams that we are, and we're lucky to be able to compete against them. So no, it's really looking forward to Clare Championship now, and I suppose like that, all my focus is in with Miltown.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, it'll definitely be one worth keeping an eye on, because I've even seen from a few Clare games down the years as well. Like, it always seems fiercely competitive, and I know in some club championships maybe you might have one team that dominates and wins it maybe 4, 5, 6 years in a row. But in Clare in particular, it does seem that on any given day, any given year, that like yourselves or any of the others could potentially go and win it. So it does seem to be fiercely competitive.
Definitely, yeah, and you'll even find it in any given championship year. There's always 1 or 2 shocks. One big team is taken out by a team that may be perceived not as good as them. So yeah, you have to be on your game every day you go out. But it's a hugely entertaining championship. No more so than the hurling. The hurling, 8 or 9 teams can win it, and similar to the football. So everyone fancies their chances. I think a big help with COVID was that a lot of guys got strength and conditioning programs and running programs into them that maybe they wouldn't have got the chance to with all the football they were playing. So a lot of club teams would have developed their players quicker than they might have in previous years, because they wouldn't have got a chance to do those strength and conditioning programs. So like that, you don't really know what you're going to come up against until all the county players come back. The hurlers are still obviously involved playing Wexford this weekend, so till they come back and play with their football teams, you won't really know what kind of team you're facing on any given day.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Obviously, factoring in the Clare senior hurlers, of course, as well. I suppose we'll run through some questions over on Instagram and a few quick 4 questions, of course, as well. Like, what would you kind of perceive maybe as your best moment of your playing day so far for club and county?
For club, definitely winning the county title in 2018 against Ennistimon. My brother Connor was injured for the 2015 campaign, and like that, he's the same age as me, so it was just a nice occasion to win with family as well as some of my best friends. So that was a great day that I'll always remember. For the county, then I'd have said beating Roscommon in 2016 in Salt Hill. It was a Roscommon team who were very unlucky not to win a Connacht final the previous week against Galway, and to get over them in a game where I suppose a quarter final was at stake, was an unbelievable occasion, and it was, I think, the best football we've played.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and like, what would you even see? Like, I suppose, is the biggest ambition, or like what's the kind of the main thing I suppose you kind of want to work towards for Clare? Like, is it to get up to Division 1 to be competitive in Munster, maybe potentially go on and win a Munster title, or what would you reckon?
Sorry, Aaron, you just broke up there. Could you go again?
No worries. Yeah, like I was just gonna say, like, what's the kind of biggest ambition for yourself, like with the Clare senior hurlers? Like, obviously, like what you mentioned there, kind of getting up to Division 1, and of course, you know, competing on Munster. Like, do you think when you see the likes of your Tipperaries and Cavans winning kind of provincial titles and whatnot, that's something that you could potentially see yourself doing one day with Clare?
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose even look the likes of Mullinall, of course, as well as Clare, I'd love to win a Munster club in my county. We've been involved in some great occasions in Munster club. We've won some games and lost some very close games against quality opposition. So I'd love to, before I finish up, I'd love to win a Munster club with my club as well. I think, listen, as a club player, if you're able to win a county championship in your own county, I think it's an ambition you should have, really, and no more so than we played Cavan last year and we had a great game with them. Up there, we won by 2 points. We were very lucky to come out of it, and then they go on and win an Ulster title. So listen, I suppose when you're aware that you can compete with these teams, and if you perform well enough, you can get the better of these teams, then of course your ambition is to win a provincial title. It has to be, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and who would you say was your favorite player growing up, obviously through the years?
That's a tough one. I would say it's probably Pádraig Joyce, Stephen O'Neill, Tyrone, and even currently playing Ross Munnelly, Laois. I suppose they're all left-legged players. So I suppose I was fond of all three, but I even Ross still playing to this day it's unbelievable, really. I mean, he was a guy who was still at the top of his game. I remember watching him up. He was a real idol, playing Leinster finals, scoring big goals in big games, and just a lot of credit due to him to still be playing inter-county football. After all he's given to Laois football. Yeah, no, definitely. I actually even swapped jerseys with him a few years ago, and it's one of the few jerseys I actually kept. I'd normally give a lot of away, but just he was one guy I really looked up to as a young fella, and to even play against him was an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose the point he got from the sideline against Laois, there was a few people asking about that. Like, was that even something that even came into your head as you went to kick it, or were you just thinking, I'll put this over, no bother at all, or was there any much kind of process that kind of went into that?
No, the only process was that if I missed it, Colm Collins will let me know about it for the next month. So I was actually looking to go short first, and I think the Laois players blocked off the pass very well. So I just said I'd have a cut, and thankfully went over the bar. But that was a performance we were all very pleased with overall as a team. I suppose it was our first game. You're kind of going into the unknown. There was a lot of new players, I suppose, who came into the team. Daniel Walsh scored 1-2 in his debut. It was a super debut, and a load of guys acquitted themselves very well that day and followed on for the rest of the year. So that day against Laois was the starting point for our consistency of performance for the whole year, and it followed on from a victory to Kildare the following week. So that was a very good victory. We were very happy with that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, it definitely did set the tone for the rest of the year for yourselves anyways. But yeah, look, listen, we'll wrap this up here anyway. Cheers, Owen, for coming on, and I suppose, yeah, best of luck for obviously the club with Miltown Malbay, and obviously for Clare in 2022.
Perfect, Aaron. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.